There are lost cartoons from the 1960s that were never meant for children to see again, erased by frightened studios and nervous broadcasters who feared the chaos they had created. These were the banned reels, the butchered edits, the uncut versions whispered about for decades. Today we unlock the vault and reveal 10 forbidden cartoons from a decade of shadows and secrets. Number 10. The Mighty Hercules, 1963. The Mighty Hercules arrived on television as a bright, heroic myth for young viewers, yet behind its colorful animation hid a darker, more violent original form. Early test prints shown in limited Canadian regions revealed a version of the series that leaned heavily into brutal mythological combat, sudden character deaths, and raw monster encounters, far beyond what American syndication would ever allow on Saturday mornings. The violence was not cartoon slapstick but deeply dramatic, with Hercules facing serpents that bled strange ichor and battling hydra beasts drawn in a harsher, more grotesque style. These uncut scenes were quietly trimmed once executives feared backlash from parents and religious groups who objected to intense magical rituals and implied sacrificial elements that the creators had woven into early drafts. What survived on broadcast was a sanitized adventure noticeably lighter in tone. Transformation sequences, once eerie and atmospheric, were shortened, leaving only a handful of glowing transition frames. Dialogue referencing ancient curses, forbidden scrolls, and darker underworld references was repeatedly softened. Several full action sequences vanished, replaced by abrupt edits that left visible animation jumps in surviving prints. Archivists who examined studio vaults decades later discovered production notes describing episodes too frightening for children, including a lost finale involving Hercules descending into the underworld to rescue a doomed ally. No footage of this ending has resurfaced, yet stills and model sheets confirm the grim themes were fully animated. Many collectors believe rare Canadian test recordings still exist, though none have been verified publicly. The Mighty Hercules that viewers remember is only a fraction of what was originally created, a ghost of a cartoon bleached of its most haunting soul. Number 9. The Beany and Cecil Show, 1962. The Beany and Cecil Show appeared to be a simple comedic romp, yet its creator, Bob Clampett, intended something sharper, more daring, and politically explosive than networks were prepared to handle. During early production, Clampett and his writers inserted bold satire referencing Cold War paranoia, government secrecy, and the uneasy relationship between studios and politicians. Many of these segments were animated in full before censors intervened, ordering redraws, withheld reels, and near-total removal of specific characters that parodied real-world figures. The uncut versions were notorious inside the studio but unseen by the public. Some episodes targeted media manipulation, portraying puppet-like characters controlling public opinion with giant propaganda machines. Others hinted at classified warfare technology and covert military operations that mirrored contemporary events too closely. Network executives panicked, fearing congressional backlash, and demanded heavy cuts. Whole sequences disappeared while dialogue was softened until the political teeth of the show were almost entirely removed. Artists who worked on the series later recalled frustration at watching finished animation locked away in studio vaults. Storyboards revealed villains modeled after real military advisors and government agencies presented as bumbling or corrupt. Even benign slapstick gags were trimmed if they carried deeper meaning. The aired show thus became a gentler version, stripped of its intended bite. Decades later, animation historians uncovered memos describing lost episodes that mocked nuclear drills and diplomatic standoffs. These were considered too dangerous to air during a tense global climate. Some fragments survived through private collectors who obtained foreign broadcast tapes believed to have been sent overseas before edits were mandated. These glimpses confirm that the Beany and Cecil Show was once a fiercely subversive cartoon whose banned, uncut reels captured anxieties and truths networks never wanted children to question. Number 8. Astro Boy, 1963. Astro Boy became a beloved icon in the West, yet the version that reached American televisions bore little resemblance to Osamu Tezuka's original creation. The Japanese broadcast tackled grief war ethics and the cost of technological power themes considered far too heavy for children in the United States. When import negotiations began, editors insisted on sanitizing every scene that suggested death brutality or moral ambiguity. As a result, Entire episodes were rewritten, redubbed, or removed, producing a fragmented adaptation missing its emotional core. In Japan, Astro Boy confronted human experimentation, rogue robots seeking revenge, and military leaders willing to sacrifice innocence for technological advancement. These darker storylines explored fear and responsibility through vivid high-stakes drama. American broadcasters, however, feared parental outrage and demanded strict removal of any scene showing bodies, blood, or existential despair. Robots that died in battle were reclassified as damaged units. Villains became less oppressive. Moral dilemmas were softened until conflict felt harmless. Some of the most powerful arcs never crossed the ocean, including stories about child soldiers, machine rights, and genocide allegories. These episodes remained unseen until rare fan subcopies circulated decades later, revealing the depth and tragedy of the uncut original. Even episodes that aired internationally were censored differently from country to country, resulting in a patchwork legacy. Historians who compared all available cuts discovered missing transitions, odd narrative gaps, and altered endings created solely to avoid controversy. Today, restored editions finally allow viewers to experience the haunting themes Tezuka envisioned. The sanitized American version, however, stands as a symbol of how networks reshaped a masterpiece into something safer and smaller, hiding the unsettling soul that made Astro Boy revolutionary. Number 7. The Alvin Show, 1961. The Alvin Show arrived on television as a cheerful musical comedy, yet beneath its light-hearted surface lived a series of bold performances and rebellious themes that alarmed executives. The original production featured full-length musical numbers inspired by early rock movements with sharper satire and edgier social commentary than most family networks wanted to broadcast. Several songs openly parodied celebrity culture, political anxieties, and shifting American values. Once test audiences reacted with concern, network leaders demanded heavy edits. Entire musical sequences disappeared from the master reels and were replaced with shorter, safer versions that minimized attitude and removed controversial visual metaphors. Characters originally portrayed with more rebellious energy were redrawn to appear gentler. Even instrumental segments were reworked to avoid associations with styles considered too provocative for children. Licensing complications made matters worse, as music rights issues triggered additional removals, leaving some episodes fractured and incomplete. Artists later recalled that early drafts included elaborate animated stage acts with shadow imagery, surreal backdrops, and jokes aimed at media manipulation. None of these survived broadcast standards. The uncut versions became legends among animators who insisted that the lost edits showcased some of the most ambitious animation the series ever produced. Archival notes uncovered decades later identified multiple reels listed as too satirical, too political, or too chaotic for public airing. Scholars found evidence of extended endings where Alvin challenged restrictive authority figures or mocked censorship directly. These scenes were immediately cut once executives realized the implications. Although a few foreign editions preserved slightly longer versions, the fully uncut musical episodes have never been released officially. What survives is a softened echo of a once daring cartoon that briefly tried to push boundaries before being trimmed into safe innocence. Number 6. Spider-Man, 1967. Spider-Man captivated viewers with its swinging heroics, yet the most infamous part of its legacy lies in the bizarre psychedelic episodes from its later seasons. Budget issues forced the studio to repurpose surreal backgrounds and experimental animation techniques, which produced eerie, nightmarish visuals. These stylistic choices unsettled networks who feared the episodes appeared too frightening or too abstract for children. As a result, several finished sequences were cut or shelved entirely. Some of these uncut scenes depicted monstrous transformations, impossible geometry, and collapsing cityscapes rendered with swirling colors that hinted at psychological horror. Rumors spread among collectors about episodes showing Spider-Man trapped inside existential dream worlds battling shapeless horrors. Network censors objected to the disturbing atmosphere and insisted that large portions of the footage be removed. This led to abrupt edits and disjointed broadcasts that confused young audiences. Ralph Bakshi's team originally intended the darker episodes to explore paranoia and urban decay, reflecting real fears from the decade. However, executives resisted anything resembling social commentary. Storyboards revealed deleted sequences portraying corrupt institutions and unnamed authoritarian forces closing in on innocent civilians. These ideas vanished before airing, leaving only scattered scraps in international prints. Animation historians searching for uncut material discovered that some foreign networks broadcast longer edits, possibly by accident. These versions contained scenes of shadowy creatures stalking empty streets and prolonged chases through warped labyrinths. None of these remain in official archives due to rights transfers and deteriorating masters. To this day, fans debate how many lost reels were produced and what disturbing stories they truly contained. Spider-Man thus stands as a fractured monument to a creative experiment that frightened its own creators into hiding their boldest work. Number 5. Jonny Quest, 1964. Jonny Quest revolutionized televised adventure with realistic action and science fiction intrigue, yet behind the broadcast version lay a trove of banned and butchered scenes deemed far too intense for children. Early drafts featured heavy gunfire, tactical combat, and depictions of espionage closely mirroring real conflicts of the period. Many of these sequences were fully animated before networks demanded removals to protect the show's family-friendly reputation. The most heavily censored material involved perilous rituals, battle sequences, and cultural depictions that executives feared would provoke backlash. Scenes portraying sacred temples and mystic ceremonies were softened or excised entirely after religious groups raised concerns. Footage involving mummies and supernatural threats was cut if it appeared too frightening. In other cases, editors redrew entire characters to reduce perceived stereotypes, resulting in continuity errors across episodes. Foreign broadcast tapes later revealed that several international versions retained longer action scenes, including chases, gunfights, and moments of genuine danger. These uncut versions showcased a more intense vision of the series, where Jonny and his companions confronted life-threatening situations with dramatic stakes. Some reels even included darker endings that were replaced in the United States with lighter resolutions. Archival documentation confirmed that creators originally sought a more mature tone, blending pulp serial atmosphere with grounded scientific detail. Studio memoranda described networks pleading for fewer explosions, fewer weapons, and fewer moments of moral ambiguity. As edits piled up, episodes grew uneven, leaving viewers with chopped transitions and abrupt tonal shifts. Despite these cuts, Jonny Quest retained immense influence, shaping future adventure animation. Yet the fully uncut series remains elusive, locked away in vaults, or lost through decades of distribution changes. What might have been a groundbreaking, adult-leaning animated drama was reshaped into a safer adventure, leaving its most daring material unseen. Number 4. The New Three Stooges, 1965. The New Three Stooges blended live-action slapstick with animated mayhem, creating a hybrid format that confused censors and alarmed parent groups. The studio originally planned for outrageous physical gags inspired by the trio's classic shorts, pushing the violence even further through exaggerated cartoon physics. Early footage featured sledgehammer strikes, explosive pratfalls, collapsing buildings, and dangerous stunts that looked shockingly real due to the live-action framing. Networks panicked once preview reels suggested that children might imitate these antics and injure themselves. Censors ordered immediate revisions, demanding the removal of every gag deemed imitable. This resulted in severe edits across multiple episodes, cutting entire segments and replacing them with tamer filler shots. Some of the funniest and most ambitious sequences survived only in internal archives, where animators lamented that their best work would never be seen. Storyboards revealed elaborate setups involving traps, runaway machinery, and hazardous chase scenes that vanished from the final broadcast. Even the animated portions were not spared. The original designs portrayed villains and monsters with grotesque, expressive features deemed too frightening for young audiences. These characters were redrawn with softer outlines and less threatening movements. Live-action wraparound segments also faced restrictions after regulators complained that the Stooges themselves set a reckless example. Several scenes of Moe delivering signature slaps and pokes were trimmed or reshot with toned-down choreography. Archivists later learned that foreign distributors briefly circulated less edited versions which contained extended slapstick routines closer to the comedy roots of the original trio. However, these prints deteriorated over time and remain difficult to locate. Today, the broadcast version reflects a muted shadow of the intended chaos, stripped of the anarchic energy that defined the Stooges' legacy, and leaving fans wondering what wild, uncut episodes once existed. Number 3. King Kong, 1966. The animated King Kong series offered children dazzling monster adventures, yet the earliest drafts embraced a darker mood rooted in tragedy and primal terror. Before network intervention, the show featured intense battle scenes of environmental destruction and moments of genuine horror that rivaled cinematic portrayals of the giant ape. Production materials reveal sequences of Kong fighting skeletal beasts, collapsing temples, and monstrous creatures drawn with terrifying detail. Executives quickly labeled the footage too scary for children, prompting substantial edits. Entire scenes depicting impalements, crushing falls, and prolonged monster roars disappeared from broadcast versions. Animators originally captured haunting expressions of pain and fear during battles, but censors insisted these frames be removed to avoid traumatizing younger viewers. Some storylines involving ancient curses and lost civilizations were also trimmed due to their occult undertones. These cuts produced abrupt narrative jumps that audiences noticed even without knowing what had been removed. Foreign airings, especially in Australia and Europe, reportedly included longer versions that maintained more of the original intensity. Fans who compared surviving recordings described episodes with extended fights where Kong struggled against monstrous foes in brutal close-quarters combat. These scenes showcased animation that was dynamic and fluid, far beyond what the U.S. broadcast preserved. Internal memos uncovered by historians detailed debates over how frightening a children's cartoon could be. The studio wanted cinematic scale and emotional weight, while networks insisted on safe, predictable adventure. The resulting compromise preserved Kong as a hero, but erased the deeper tragedy and rage embedded in the earliest concept. The uncut reels have become legendary among collectors. Though a few fragments surfaced from private archives, the complete darker sequences remain hidden. What viewers remember today is only a softened version of a once powerful series that dared to approach mythic brutality before the axe of censorship fell. Number 2. Cool McCool, 1966. Cool McCool entered the animated world as a playful parody of spy thrillers, yet beneath its humorous surface lay a sharp satirical edge aimed squarely at Cold War politics. The creators designed villains modeled after shadowy intelligence agencies and corrupt power brokers, while plots referenced surveillance paranoia and covert operations. When these themes collided with network standards, censors swiftly demanded heavy alterations. Entire episodes were redrawn, while footage considered too politically risky disappeared permanently. The cut material included interrogation scenes, elaborate traps, and dark humor revolving around global espionage. Animators originally crafted sequences where the hero faced moral dilemmas involving double agents and undisclosed conspiracies. These elements were trimmed, leaving only quirky slapstick and simplified villain motivations. Editors softened visual gags that hinted at torture devices or secret prisons, believing such imagery might draw criticism from watchdog groups. Storyboards later revealed a more ambitious show that used comedy to criticize government secrecy and unchecked authority. One lost episode depicted a villain manipulating international treaties through manufactured crises. Another showcased satirical technology resembling real military prototypes. Both episodes were shelved before airing. After revisions, the broadcast cartoons lacked the deeper commentary that defined their earliest drafts. Foreign markets occasionally received slightly less censored editions, which retained longer chases and more intense confrontations. Fans who viewed these prints noted sharper dialogue and clearer narrative stakes. However, the fully uncut material remains locked away or possibly destroyed. Cool McCool thus stands as a casualty of censorship during an era dominated by geopolitical fear. What aired was entertaining, but shallow, far removed from the biting satire envisioned by its creators. The lost uncut versions remain a tantalizing glimpse of what could have been a bold animated critique of Cold War absurdity. Number 1. The Marvel Superheroes, 1966. The Marvel Superheroes was a landmark series that brought comic book icons to television using a distinctive cutout animation style. Yet buried within its production history lies a series of drastic edits that stripped away some of the boldest, most controversial material ever attempted in a children's superhero cartoon. Because the show relied directly on comic panels, many early sequences included imagery of warfare, blood, and morally complex battles taken straight from the original stories. Network executives panicked once they realized these frames violated broadcast standards, prompting one of the most aggressive censorship campaigns of the decade. Entire shots of Hydra soldiers being struck in combat explosions showing shrapnel and villains suffering visible injuries were removed. Some episodes originally depicted real-world organizations, including extremist groups and political entities, leading censors to demand redrawn villains with generic designs. Editors replaced panels, referencing wartime atrocities with softer action scenes that removed emotional weight and historical context. These cuts resulted in abrupt transitions, confusing continuity, and fragmented storytelling. Collectors later discovered that international markets sometimes received longer edits containing the removed panels, including darker portrayals of Captain America facing twisted remnants of past wars. In some cases, moral dilemmas involving loyalty, sacrifice, and psychological trauma survived overseas broadcasts, but not in the United States. Scholars noted that these sequences revealed deeper complexities in Marvel storytelling far beyond the sanitized heroics that children ultimately watched. Production notes show that creators hoped to challenge young audiences with mature themes such as corrupt leadership and the cost of violence. However, network fears over political backlash and parental outrage silenced these ambitions. Today, the officially released versions preserve only the safest fragments, while the uncut versions circulate as rare artifacts. The Marvel Superheroes stands as a testament to how censorship reshaped an entire generation of animation, hiding its sharpest edges from public view. These lost cartoons from the 1960s carried danger, courage, and raw creativity that networks rushed to bury. Their uncut forms revealed truths animation was never meant to share openly. Yet the shadows remain alive today, inviting curious viewers to search for the reals they were never meant to see.